No, I don't think Ziggy is the worst brawler in the game. I'll go as far as to say he isn't even a bad brawler, but that doesn't mean there aren't any problems with him. So in this video I'll be going over the best loadout to use and the best modes that Ziggy does well on. Now, why does the community think Ziggy is the worst brawler in the game? Well, it comes down to two things, with the first being his damage. Now, this I can agree on because in practice, his damage is a bit underwhelming, and couple that with the way you have to aim his attack and it can get frustrating to use, but this is only his regular attack. His super suffers from much lower damage, which sounds bad on its own, but the fact that it travels slowly makes it more hated by some players. Which brings me to the second point, and that is his attack and super speed. Personally, I'm fine with their speed because it doesn't take long to understand the best way to attack or how to aim. If I were to buff Ziggy in any way, it would be a damage boost because as of now, the only way to actually do well is with this loadout. So starting off with his gadget, Electric Shuffle summons more lightning attacks near enemy brawlers for 5 seconds. Now, you're not guaranteed to deal damage every time with this, but one thing it is good at is kiting because that allows you to hit brawlers much more accurately since they are essentially surrounded. But keep in mind, this usually only works on slow moving brawlers, and any attempt at using it for someone like BB, you'll quickly find out it doesn't always do well. In that case, you might be thinking about using his other gadget called Now You See Me, which allows you to teleport anywhere using your regular attack. In my experience, this gadget wasn't all that useful since you sacrifice attack speed over mobility, and in all honesty there was very few times where this proved useful. I would just stick with Electric Shuffle not just for the damage but also because it complements his star power, the Great Ziggy, which increases his damage by 18% after landing the first hit on something. This kind of damage that he does should have been his regular attack damage because it is very useful for any situation. Now, with all that said, the only two modes that I think Ziggy does well on are Heist and Knockout. Starting off with Heist, Ziggy can do fairly well in both offense and defense, that is if the enemy team has no fast moving brawlers. As I said before, his attack speed is quite slow, and since this is a fast moving mode, it could be devastating if you end up missing your attacks. On the other hand, he could do quite a lot of damage on the vault if you can manage to get that far. This is where his gadget shines as it can do high damage and can prevent brawlers from getting too close to you. His super can also do somewhat good here, but again, considering how slow it takes just to get it, it's best to stick with what you have available. Finally, we move on to Knockout, which I believe is the best mode for Ziggy. Once again, using the same loadout, he does even better here because kiting a brawler can be done more easily. I've said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of Knockout or Bounty because you would usually find the same brawlers being used, but Ziggy can still do well despite that drawback. Speaking of the same brawlers, the main reason why Ziggy is so hard to use is because of the meta, which has hardly changed in the past 2 years and that values fast moving and hard hitting brawlers like Edgar. Ziggy is far from being the only one to be affected by this, which is why I don't consider him to be bad or the worst brawler in the game. He certainly has problems, but I do think with a bit of practice, you can understand how to use him in case he ever gets a buff and becomes popular. Let me know if you guys have ever used him and what you think about him. Anyways, have a good day.